Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Hangout. I'm your host, the mom who reads comics at Charming Red on Twitter, and joining me, as always, is the fabulous Karen D,
Hello.
the wonderful Allison the Gentle Nerd,
Hello.
and our first guest since we took our summer break, Miss Transformers, and soon to be of her own creator-owned work, Toil and Trouble, Miss Mairghread Scott.
Hi, everyone.
Yay, you said her name right.
Core. We are so glad to have you back.
I'm so glad to be back. Hope you guys all enjoyed your summer break.
Trying. We're trying.
Yeah. Still kind of on a break a little bit, but we came together for you. Yes.
Aww.
Basically how this all came about was online, immediately saw the announcement about your new book, and it's about the three fates, the witches, and knowing Karen's love and passion, I immediately jumped online and was like, do you want me to ask her on the show? I'm going to ask her on the show. Let's ask her on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're surprisingly popular. I did not think that people. I was like, oh, people would be like, oh, great, it's a story about Macbeth. But everyone's been like, the three witches of Macbeth. Yes.
Yeah. I'm one of those people, the three fates. I love. Like, I love witch stories, but I especially love the three fates. I think the dynamic between them is really cool. And we got an advance copy. And
Yes.
so we are not going to be spoilery. But yeah, do you want to kind of give your pitch as to, for those who don't know, what it's going to be about and when it's going to come out?
Sure. Yeah. So, Toil and Trouble, as you might have guessed, is an adaptation of the play Macbeth. But it's told from the point of view of the three witches in the play. And what we find out is that the three witches in the play are sort of the guiding spirits of Scotland. One of the things they do is that they get together whenever a king's going to die and they pick who the next king is supposed to be. But this story starts out with a schism between them, and it eventually leads to a war between the witches over whether or not Macbeth is the one who's worthy of being king.
Very nice.
So, yes, now you don't have to have read Macbeth at all to enjoy the graphic novel, but we did try and very closely mirror the events of the graphic novel, so if you do know the play, you get sort of a little extra boost.
Now, this dynamic of having this disagreement between the witches is, I guess, to me, I guess that's kind of like the unique selling point or the mystery part of the story, because, if you just go and watch the play, Karen, you were saying that, that, like, one of your...
view the fates as, like, one entity.
Yeah, the Weird Sisters were like the three in one voice.
Mm-hmm. So this is a little different. You took a different approach on it, and there's schism.
Yeah, well, they're often portrayed as being very unified. I mean, in the play, they don't even have names. They're literally the first witch, second witch, and third witch. But this story is so focused around them that we wanted to give them a really individual dynamic. So the three witches in our story, their names are Smerte, who's our main character, Riata, and Kate. And a lot of the graphic novel revolves around sort of exploring how they got to where they are and what were their lives like and sort of what drives you to take on this kind of role as like the guardian spirit of a nation, so it's been really fun. They're all from different time periods in history, and they all have very different ideas about what it means to, what their role is in society. So as the play goes on, that conflict just builds more and more, and as they start to fracture from each other, you really get these very different ideas about, what is the role of religion and magic, and how is it that all these three women are all trying to do good things? They're all trying to do the right thing for their country, but they all see the right thing as being completely different from each other.
Completely different, which is, I was like, wait, they're not unified like not even
Not at all.
a little bit. Like, I mean, I like it. It's unique. It's interesting. But as someone who loves the Three Fates and witches and stuff, it was just like, oh, okay, this is new.
I think it's really interesting how you've kind of given, because they're not unified, they all have their own personalities, and their personalities kind of line up with the roles that they take. Like, the oldest one is like the peacemaker, trying to make sure everyone plays nice, and then like the middle one is very bossy because she's like, it's that whole like mother maiden crone kind of deal. Like, it's a very cool dynamic. Like, do those roles kind of remain constant for them in forming their personalities? Like, or are we going to sort of see them branch out of those sort of initial boxes?
Well, it's interesting you say that because we did actively try and design them for like a mother maiden crone look, and they also are all tied into the three realms of Celtic mythology. So Smerte is very connected with the ocean, and you see like her familiar is a crab, and then Riad is very connected with the air, and then Kate's very connected with earth, and you'll start to see different contrasts about that, especially the roles that they play and sort of who they are as people. So like you get interesting contrasts where Kate is the maiden role, and she is kind of like a very little sister character for a really long time. She's actually the oldest of the three, and as you sort of learn more about her, you get like a very different sense of her as the play goes on. So in the beginning, she's a really fun character, and like there's like a really cute scene where there's Prince Malcolm is running around the play, and she keeps talking about how cute he is, and she's kind of like a little bit of a, I don't know what the female equivalent of a skirt chaser is, but she's a little boy crazy almost, and then you sort of like, that becomes a layer that we get to explore more and more, so it's been really fun.
I want to take a second to talk about your co-creators, because you've got the three fates, and then you've got the three women working on this book, and it's really fun. If you could tell people more about the women that you're putting this book together with.
Oh yeah, so my co-creators, the interior artists on the book, are Kelly and Nicole Matthews, who are twins, which somehow is like weirdly fitting with Macbeth that we would find twins. And this is their first big published comic book, and they're just really killing it. And they bring such a specific, unique design to the book. I think one of the things we really wanted was a very cinematic look, and I feel like the book plays out just like a movie. Like, they really give you really good pacing. They really control where your eye moves around the page, and we have all these little like when the witches perform magic, we'll have these little insets that cut into the panel that will sort of go in closer on what they're doing, and the Matthews sisters just bring like a great design sensibility for those and really give you that sort of creeping feeling of unease, as things sort of start to go wrong. Or at least that's what I think. I don't know. Did it work? Did we?
Oh, I thought it was beautiful, but it was one of those things where read the book and then found out about the now, does one do art and one do colors, or
that was going to be my question? Yeah.
They actually switch off, so they both do art and they both do colors, depending on just where they're at in terms of their schedule.
And do they both have very similar styles? So,
yeah, they both work really seamlessly. I've never noticed, like, oh, this is Kelly and this is Nicole. Like, at least for me, I feel like they present a very seamless package. So, and they're really so cool. Pretty. Although they work digitally, so I can't buy any of their like original art. I'm trying to get them to like do a couple pages like on paper just so I can have it.
Little sketches. I'm sure.
Get your own private commissions.
Exactly. Well, no, and it's really fun too because we have this kind of complicated process working with them. So it's probably really good that they work digitally because I'll send them the script and they'll send me the thumbnails. And then the script is like chock full of all of these links and historical references, like this is what a chair looks like, this is what this person's outfit should look like, this is, you know, this part of the landscape. Like we actually have like a Google map of like this scene is set here in this part of the Scottish coast. And then once they go through thumbnails, I go back in again, and like everything that's on the page that I missed the first time, it'll be like, oh, here's links to, you know, ship design and to this kind of thing, and remember that we you know, we need more diversity on this part of the panel or something like that. So it's been a really neat process. I feel really bad because I'm really nitpicky about that kind of thing. I'm like, there can't be any forks on the table, but they're really good about that. And it's been like a really interesting process, like trying to pull as much reality in to the book as we possibly can. I feel like it grounds the supernatural elements. So it's not like, we really want to avoid that kind of old school Doctor Strange feel where people are just kind of shouting things at each other, you know, and it's like the emerald bands of whoever totally trumps the red whatever of blah, 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 you know, and you're just kind of like, ooh. We really wanted our book to feel very grounded and our magic to feel very grounded, even if you didn't understand every aspect of it.
That was another question that I had was or it was something that struck me while reading the book, especially during the battle scenes there in the first issue, was just how diverse the people who were involved in the battle and things of that nature. And a lot of times people think of historical references to you know, to stories taking place in Europe, and they just assume there's, I mean, to put it bluntly, they kind of just whitewash it in their minds, and they assume this lack of diversity within the settings or what's going on. And looking at the battle scene, it was being struck by just how diverse all the people involved in that were. What was that a point that you guys set out from the very beginning that you wanted to include, or was it something that developed during research?
Well, it was actually a thing, and I'm going to be really frank here, because I was one of those people that when I first started writing the story, I was like, oh, well, it's 11th century Scotland, so everyone's white, and that's just the deal. Sorry, you know, that's what's historically accurate. And my husband and a couple other really good friends I had were like, you know, is that really real, or is that just what you think is real? So I started researching, and, you know, I got a few good links from, there's a great Tumblr called Medieval People of Color. And
I love that Tumblr.
Researching the history, and it's like, oh, everyone knows that Roman legions, like, marched all over the UK and were there for a really long time. But a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those Roman legions, like, came from Spain, not from Rome proper, you know? So there actually were quite a lot of people of color that would have been around Scotland at that period, descendants of Romans, people who had traded up and down the coast. The Vikings, you know, would pick people up everywhere they raided and bring them back. There's actually been a lot of research lately that have shown that a lot of Vikings were women, that Vikings had a lot of women raid with them, you know, I guess because it makes sense if you're dating someone and you're going to go be off at sea for a bunch of, you know, for like 4 or 5 months, like just take your wife with you. And so
the couple that raids together stays together.
Exactly. And so it became a really important thing for me that that we portray this world as accurately as possible, and part of that is showing that it was a lot more diverse than we give it credit for. So
what inspired you to take a look at Macbeth from the viewpoint of the three fates?
Well, I always really liked Macbeth. My family were like huge Shakespeare nuts, and I was born from a C-section. So my dad would always like quote Macbeth, and he's like, "You're the bloody child," blah blah blah. Like,
that doesn't sound damaging at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's not good. But in context, it was totally fine. And I'm not messed up by it at all. But one of the things in the play is that I feel like a lot of times the women in the play aren't portrayed very well. You know, like the three witches in the play have like 5 minutes of screen time. They just kind of show up, say this prophecy, and like walk off. And then they show up again and say another like prophecy and walk off. That's it. It really is like if you watch The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West is not on screen nearly as much as you think she is. But they had this huge oversized impact, and I always sort of wondered, like, why? You know, why did they do what they do? I mean, why invest all of this energy to give these prophecies to Macbeth and then just walk off, you know? And that kind of started nagging me, and so I was in college, and we were assigned to write an adaptation of Macbeth, and instead of sort of pushing it forward or pushing it backward, I decided to write the entire play from the Three Witches, and that was kind of the germ of what's became Toil and Trouble. So.
You mentioned the women of the play, and probably the one that gets the shortest shrift is Lady Macbeth. Are we going to see her at all in this story?
So mean to Lady Macbeth.
Are we going to see Lady Macbeth in this story?
Yes, actually you are. And Lady Macbeth she's actually a really crucial role, and we tried to give her a lot more backstory. Her backstory is also very influenced by the real life Lady Macbeth, and I really wanted you to see her as a person. I think in really good versions of Macbeth, you can really see sort of the tragedy of these people spiraling out of control. But I think in like the bad high school version of Macbeth, like everyone can feel very like cackly, and especially Lady Macbeth, you're like, oh, well, she's just evil. And if there's one thing that I really want to happen in the Third Witch is the fact that I really want you to be able to see where everyone is coming from and root for any person in the book. Everyone has a sort of valid thing that they're going after, or a complaint that they're trying to get resolved. So no one is just like a crazy backstabbing murderer. And because honestly, it's more tragic that way. I had someone say once that people will do much more horrible things for love than they will for hate, and this book is kind of an exploration of that.
So, for those who are interested in checking out, originally, when it was first announced, the book was called The Third Witch, and the title just recently changed to Toil and Trouble. So for those who are interested in ordering Toil and Trouble, you've got, I know on Twitter, and I'm assuming on other social media sites, you've got the order form for people to download and take to their comic book store, correct?
Yes, so on my Twitter, Tumblr, and my personal website, mscottwriter.com, you can find the order form that you can just print out and take to your local comic book store, and they will let you pre-order it. And you can actually pre-order it until the 10th is when final order cutoff is. So that's the last time the stores could sort of update their order with Diamond. And you can also order it directly from Boom's website for print copies, and then when it comes out, it'll come out September 2nd, I believe, the first week of September, and you'll be able to also read it on Comicosity. So Comicosity doesn't have a pre-order ability necessarily, but
just like a subscription. They have like a subscription service once the actual series is like placed on their website.
Yeah, so, once the first issue's out, you can subscribe to the series. So, and we're a 6-issue series that will be collected into trade. So,
how is working? Especially since this is a passion project for you that you've been working on for a really long time, and that's finally being created. What is it like working on this versus the licensed property that you normally work on? For those who are not aware, you also write for the Transformers series, and lately there's been the Combiner Wars and another Windblade series and everything else. How is that? And then also as well as your work for Dynamite on the Swords of Sorrow series. What is it like to you licensed versus your own work?
Well, I mean, in some ways it's really different, and in some ways it's not. Like, definitely I have a lot more control, over Toil and Trouble, and I felt a little freer, especially with a company like Boom. I really felt encouraged to, push certain elements a lot more than I would in a licensed book. So we deal with some really difficult topics like miscarriage and, losing a child, and our relationships are really complex between these women, and it's a very, very adult book, whereas with Transformers, even though I try and give it quite a bit of depth, I'm always very conscious of the idea that people like to just hand the comic to kids, even if the comic isn't written for kids. So you're also very conscious when you're working with a franchise that, these are someone else's toys that you're playing with. And Shakespeare's dead, so I can take his toys, and he can't.
You can do whatever you want, and he can't say anything.
Exactly.
Screw that guy.
Well, in a weird way too, though, is because I really like Shakespeare, and I think he's like, I don't know, people always treat him as like super sacred, and like he was some, like big artiste, like poking, looking down his nose at everyone. But Shakespeare people used to call Shakespeare an upstart crow, and Shakespeare stole everything. Like a bunch of his work is ripped off from old fables, and he would put even in Macbeth, there's like this completely extraneous nod to like basically what a great king the king who was funding him is. Like, that makes no sense in the play, but it's just sort of like wink wink, guys who paying my bills. So I always feel like I don't know, I feel like Shakespeare would be okay with me sort of playing with his toys. I don't think Shakespeare was nearly as precious about his own work as people sort of are about his work.
He can appreciate another artist making money.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
hilarious to think of product placement in this play.
Oh my god,
basically.
yeah, his stuff has tons
Dude,
of
Virgil
product
wrote the entire Aeneid just to like create a direct link between Augustus and the gods. Like, it's a time-honored tradition.
a time-honored tradition of selling out.
Yay. Yay.
For those who are not aware, so there's Transformers and Combiner Wars and Windblade. Love Windblade. But real quick, just have to ask. I know I got to interview you for a print interview for Comicosity about your Swords of Sorrow Chaos prequel, but now that I'm sitting here talking to you in person, how fun was it to work with some of like the most evil women in the Dynamite universe?
That book was so much fun to write. I'm so sad that #grapes didn't trend. For anyone who hasn't read like Swords of Sorrow Chaos, it's about all the villains in the Swords of Sorrow crossover event, and it's about how they sort of got involved. And so one of the things that happens is that the evil bad guy comes to all these villainesses and is like, I will give you sort of one thing that you desire, and you get to see their vision of sort of what is their perfect future, and one of them is, like she's like standing before this throng of admirers and they're like pouring blood on her, and then another one, just wants the world to be destroyed, and then one of them, it's just her like in a bed with a bunch of naked dudes feeding her grapes. And I was like, oh, and that's the panel description, but the way the way Mirka drew it, it's like, I thought like, oh, it'll be her and like a bunch of grapes, and you realize it's like a guy's leg, but she drew it so it's like a full butt shot, of this dude like right in the panel, with like some grapes,
great.
like, grape off his crotch. It's so hilarious.
It's pretty awesome.
If you can't have fun with those characters, they really don't work. Like, what's the point of writing, a leather-clad vampire demon if you're not going to have fun with it?
It is. Because there's all of these books. They're written by different women, and so they all have different tones. And the Chaos prequel definitely has like a fun tone about it, which I just really appreciated, because you read some of the other books and you see them come in and you see them attacking the main characters, but you don't necessarily understand why unless you've read the Chaos prequel, and then it's just hilarious because it's like, oh yeah, She wants to destroy the entire world. I hope she's not successful. So.
No, they were definitely fun characters to write. And they were kind of intimidating at first because they're sort of like, I'm just gonna say it, they're like so cheesecake in their original thing, and you're like, oh my god, how am I gonna redeem this? What do I do? And then I was like, well, the only way out of it is just through it, you know? Like, you just have to own it. It's sort of the difference between having a character that is a dude and he gets caught in a dress versus just having someone come out and be like, no, I'm a drag queen, that's just how I roll, you know? So we decided that if these women are going to be wearing 6-inch heels, that's because they're the type of woman that just wears 6-inch heels as soon as they get out of bed. So I think it ended up being pretty fun.
It did, and it was amazing how if you go back and you've read some of the previous books of these characters, and then you read the Chaos prequel, it's amazing to see the shift between them doing stuff for the sake of the reader or the assumption of who the traditional readers of those books are, and then them doing stuff because they feel that's how they feel like doing things, or the empowerment feeling that it kind of just screams off the page. So.
Yeah, well, and that's a really cool thing because I feel like I sometimes get this backlash with the idea that if you write female characters properly, they don't have problems and they don't have conflict, you know? And I feel like because we have so few female characters in comics, they almost never have conflict with each other, you know, because you're always like, oh, well, then that makes them catty or unlikable or stuff like that. But I've always really liked to give my female characters really complex relationships with each other, and I feel like that dynamic, you really see that dynamic in play with, like, Windblade and Chromia, or in The Third Witch, with, like, Smerte and Kate and Riata, is that I really want these to feel like real women who are trying to have real relationships. You know, this isn't sort of the gal pals book.
You're not going to get along with your friends all the time, nor are you going to, wish death upon them 24/7.
Exactly, because those are the best relationships. Like a Magneto Professor Xavier relationship, like, that's an amazing relationship. You know, you're my friend, but you're my enemy, but you're my friend again. Like, that's so cool, and that's so much cooler than sort of we eat salad together once a week and talk about the boys we think are cute. I don't know. I feel so bad. There was like a trend when I started reading comics where it was like you would have two of the female characters and they would always go out for lunch and they would always be eating salad on like some bistro, like on like some sidewalk bistro. Like that was how you knew that they were friends.
Makes me think of the meme of like all the stock photos of women eating salad and smiling.
Oh, yes! Yes, and I forgot who it was, but someone was using those as stock photos, and like that's why all those women looked really odd. Like they were always so happy no matter what they were saying. They were like, oh my god, the Adventures Manor just blew up.
It's like I'm thinking of several X-Men books right now where that's what was going on. And
you know what, I can't draw at all. So
yeah.
Whatever you gotta do. But yeah, that was kind of interesting. I remember that floating around.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk about the books that we enjoyed the most from this past week and what we're looking forward to for this week. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first since I only read one book. I'm very sleepy. I've got a lot going on. Oh, I realized we probably could have done from the past like few weeks.
Yes, you could have. It doesn't have to be just this.
Darn it, I did not prepare for that. So.
Well, we already know Rachel Rising's a choice. I mean, don't do the what you already know.
Yeah.
Here you go.
So from the Batgirl Annual #3, I am just so freaking happy that Stephanie Brown is back and that she's back as Spoiler. I love it so much. And you guys know, I was saying for years, bring her back. She doesn't need to be Batgirl. Bring her back as Spoiler because that's awesome. That is an awesome character. And it's just, I'm really happy because I didn't know that she would be in this issue until I started reading it. And like, Jessica, you tweeted at me, like letting me know too. It was just a really nice surprise, and I don't know. I want her to show up in every single book. Like, I'm legitimately looking forward to Catwoman because Stephanie Brown will be in it. And I'm not a huge Catwoman fan. Well, not a huge fan of this version of Catwoman, which everybody loves, and I get why people love it, but I'm not a big
It's not your genre. It's not your genre choice normally.
Yes.
Do you think that spoiler being in the book kind of lightens the mood of it a little bit?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the wolves are so.
You would add spoiler to every single book the way that you would add Hope Summers to every book. Like,
yeah, for very different reasons, but yeah.
You want Hope to kill everyone, and you want Steph to save everyone.
Yeah, and like in a very lighthearted way, and then in a very evil way with the.
I want to see like a Marvel DC crossover, like Hope Summers versus Stephanie Brown, and then.
Oh my God, they would be such good friends.
She's writing the fan fiction in her head.
I know. That can happen. Maybe we can convince Jimmy Palmiotti to do it. I can see him wanting to do that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right? I think he would jump on that.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Moving on. What book are you looking forward to reading?
Let me see. There aren't a ton of books next week, at least for me.
Quick, everyone jump on previewsworld.com. Go down.
I already had mine pulled up for once.
That is where I am.
Well,
and honestly,
I'm allowing our audience to catch up. Because, hey, we might have somebody new who doesn't know. If you go to previewsworld.com and you scroll down the left-hand side under release info and click on new releases, that gives you a list of all the books coming out for that week that are available via Dynamite. Not Dynamite. Sorry. Diamond. Okay, what's on the brain?
I guess Miss Marvel, even though I'm like way behind.
Oh yeah, it's the big, finally the team-up issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's my pick. I'm going to just take the easy route.
Mala and Carol.
Yay.
Okay, I'll go next. For me, I was torn between Sex Criminals and Southern Bastards for this week. I didn't bring all of my stuff from the past few weeks. I'm at my mom's house. My mom's over here, and it's really weird to have her like sitting in on this whole experience. But Sex Criminals number 11 finally out, and I think I liked this issue because it did more to kind of pull a lot of threads together in the story and kind of move things forward, and it's now put John and Susie in a very interesting place in their relationship. Like, Susie is figuring out things about John. Also, Rachel was in it, and I love Rachel. On the other side, like, this focused in just on Southern Bastards focused just on one person. It's part of the Homecoming arc, but it was really more like it read like a one-shot from Esau's point of view, which was very disturbing to see. This is definitely super violent. I would encourage you, by the way, if your shop got any of them, to get the variant for this issue, which is the one of the dog tearing up the Confederate flag. The proceeds, I believe, for those variants are going to, I think it's the church in Charleston. Is that right?
It's a relief organization, or it's some sort of fund. Here, I'll look it up right now.
It's some fund, I think, related to the families of the people who were killed in Charleston. And if you missed it on Tumblr, Jason Latour's amazing essay, "Death to the Flag, Long Live the South" essay is reprinted in the back of this book, along with some pictures of our Heroes Con compatriots. Rob, who is our friend Rob Gibson, right here, and there he is again right there, and his lovely wife Brandy. Rob and Brandy were Scott and my roommates at Heroes Con this year, and walked around with a big giant stick and made people very happy. So that was the other reason I picked Southern Bastards. And then for next week, hands down, Wicked and the Divine. Tula Lote is drawing the issue. Oh my gosh, the preview art looks amazing, and we're finally going to meet Tara, who's the last member of the Pantheon that we haven't met. I'm also excited for Midnighter. Really getting into that.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought I'd be so into a book that was that violent, but like somehow there's the right balance of violence and comedy, and it works. And I think he's also saying something about the violence with the violence. So, yeah, Steve Orlando's doing wonderful things with that book. As is
he's very good with layers and being kind of slightly meta-referential without having to break any fourth walls or anything like that.
And there's a new artist on this issue, right? Like this isn't the same artist that has been on the previous issues?
It's correct, because I think the first issue artist comes back with issue 4.
Okay.
So
Actually, I can talk about a book because you liked Sex Criminals, and I actually got one of the variants.
Hold that up. Hold that up. You got a self-portrait of Chip.
I know, although it's not of his penis, which I find weirdly disappointing. No, but yes, this is a great issue, and I love with the cover that the cover I feel like is Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue. Like if you just took off Sex Criminals and you were like Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue, like that's I've always thought that was really neat looking.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite comic this week, though, as good as Sex Criminals was, has to be this really cool image book called Copperhead.
Oh.
Yes, I know,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like it's a Western in space, although it's much more Western than space. Like I think of it more as like a modern Western. They have like some space elements, but really it's not about that. And it's about the sheriff of this small town, and she's a single mom, and she gets put in this backwater, corrupt mining town. And it's just such a great book, especially because I never thought about how close single motherhood is to like making you the stoic, man with no name kind of character.
Yes.
Like it really
Yes.
adds like a nice edge to that trope, and like to that. So like it's very, because those people are all basically sort of like my way or the highway. I don't say anything. I'm never out of control. I'm never, I've always got my shit together. And it's like, oh my god, that totally is what a single mom would be like. But it's a really great book, and it does a lot of really interesting things with poverty and racism, even though it's racism with aliens and war, and I just think it's all without sort of getting bogged down in its own message,
It's able to convey messages in a right or wrong, no matter, depending upon what your opinion of this is. The way I see it is the creators have gone about in a purposeful manner of teaching lessons in a palpable way to audiences who are not necessarily opening to learning. If that makes sense.
That's the tradition of sci-fi. Like that's the whole point of the genre, is taking more extreme versions of problems that we face, and sort of being able to investigate them on an emotional level, where you can't do that as well with sort of in a way that puts your guard down a little lower, because you're like, oh, we don't have androids, so we can talk about that. But I think it's totally cool, and I think it's not art that's pushing a message, but it's art that's clearly interested in talking about things, and quite frankly, if you're not trying to say something with your art, then you're kind of just masturbating. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
No, you're
it's
fine.
Like, why just write a fan fiction if you don't want your art to say anything or mean anything? Like.
Mm-hmm.
I have to completely agree with the choice of Copperhead. Copperhead is actually one of my books that I've had to put on my. It's always on my must-read list. For, you know, we've got like Wicked and Divine and Rachel Rising and things like that up there. For me, Copperhead is one of those books on my it will always be good. I will always recommend it. I'm never gonna dog it kind of books.
Oh, and have you guys seen Infinite Loop?
Yes. It's gorgeous.
Love it. Especially lovely for it's a book about a sort of time policewoman. Her job is to repair damage to certain timelines by collecting things that aren't supposed to be dealing with things that aren't supposed to be in that time showing up in that time. Although that's not really what the story's about. It's not like a Warehouse 13 kind of thing. But it just visually, so many interesting ways of exploring alternate realities, the relationship of time, the relationship of space on the page. If you like some of the things that like McKelvey does in terms of pushing panels and like pushing layouts and stuff, like remember Young Avengers had that one fight scene that was all on a diagram of the room,
Loved
you
that
know, and
scene.
Novar was like moving around the room. Exactly, like this book does a lot of that same kind of interesting pushing the medium to help explain a concept that isn't natural to the medium. So,
there's a lot of people like Allred and Lieber and a lot of, especially it seems like a lot of the Marvel artists are really good at doing that, and then you're starting to, and maybe somebody out there knows better than I do. I can't figure out, you know, looking through comics throughout history, I can't figure out where that started, if that started more, because like you see it in like some of the indie, you know, kind of pulp mags or whatever, or anything like, not pulp, some of the more of the independent books from like the 80s, but then at the same time it's almost, I don't know if it goes away, but it seems like it's becoming a lot more popular now, and it's such a great tool when you've got such, you know, when you've got massive action or things going on in order to explain what's happening.
I think it's a cycle thing, because I was at Comic-Con and I actually picked up a big volume of Crazy Cat, which was drawn in like 1906, 1908, you know, and Little Nemo. And the panel layouts in Crazy Cat are so innovative, even to this day. And the way that Little Nemo handles like space and that dreamlike sense of scale and the energy that every panel has is, if it was published today, it would be considered groundbreaking still. So I think it's just something you see rise and fall with the medium.
Really quick, I'm going to throw out there, because heck, you did an awesome job of, you know, covering some of the best books out there. My pick for this coming week is Swords of Sorrow, the Deja Thoris and Irene Adler #3, because oh my gosh, I love what Leah Moore's been doing with that book, and the art is just absolutely gorgeous, and so yeah. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add?
Well, if you are looking for more posts on Toil and Trouble, you can follow me on Twitter at Mairghread Scott, and you can follow me on Tumblr at mscottwrites, and then my website, mscottwriter.com. We're actually doing a series. You liked all my weird little history talk. We're doing a series of posts about the character designs for each of the main characters, and talking about the evolution of that design and, you know, historical references that play into that design. So if you're into that kind of geeky stuff, come on by.
Nice. Well, Mairghread, thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to talk to you about this book, and everybody go pre-order it.
Yes, you have till the 10th. Pre-order, please.
Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy your comics this week.
Bye.